All right, come on in and we're going to get started here. I'll just do it from here. I can't get it to come off there. I'm not going to introduce Barry again. We've all met him now. I do feel selfish this weekend. Crystal and I have had a great visit and really have enjoyed having Tina and Barry at our home and sharing so much time with them. I wanted to emphasize that I meant to do it in the assembly and I forgot, but Barry and Tina both have offered and extended an invitation for counseling. There is no cost to their counseling services. They do it a lot virtually from what I understand right now, especially during the COVID years. That's really awkward to say now, isn't it? But during the times of COVID, they really probably, like we did, increased the amount of work in telework, virtual counseling and things of that nature. But I told him I wanted to extend that invitation again. They're serious when they mean that, if you need to have counseling or you want to participate in counseling, call them. The contact information is in the handouts that we've given you. So take advantage of that. Again, they are very experienced, as you can tell from the last couple of days, and they are more than sincere in saying that if you want to talk, please call. So go ahead, Barry.
Yeah, and let me add one more thing to that. I kind of don't even like the word counseling. I like the word helping better, because counseling kind of has a something's wrong with me connotation. And Tina and I would far rather help people be proactive than dig their way out of a mess. And so sometimes just helping people do what they want to do right, well, is what we love doing the most. And so if you're having a difficult situation with something and needing to make a decision, having a hard time, maybe if you feel like you're drifting away and life's taking your connection away from you and you just kind of frustrated, need a boost in the arm, we'd love to help you with that. So call, and if you call, and in fact, if you ladies would rather call Tina, just remember that her cell phone number is one less than mine. I'm 2555 and she's 2554 with the same number otherwise. And so I didn't put that one down. Sometimes I do, but you usually have to leave messages and we'll get back with you, or text and we'll text back. So, but we decided several years ago we would spend the rest of our lives trying to help marriages do better. And so we'd just as soon help yours as people in Tennessee. So if we can, that's why we're here. All right, so can you make it one more? I don't know if I can or not, but I'll try. So we're going to continue with our 21st century parenting challenges. Let's see which way we're doing. Okay. All right, so we'll again look at some scriptures that we've looked at. Here are the eras that I now have a new opportunity to think about that based on our conversation earlier. But children are a blessing from God. Here's the fourfold growth. That's what we want of our children. We want to keep teaching them at all times. Fathers have an added responsibility. And so in the previous hour, we looked at challenge number 1, overprotected children. Challenge number 2, helping them to learn to make mistakes and to correct them. I didn't talk much, I'm realizing now, about how important it is to sit down with them and help them to understand how to learn from making mistakes. But having communication, I feel like sometimes we just spend all our effort telling them they were wrong and punishing them, instead of helping them in decision making to make the decision differently the next time they're faced with that. Help them to see their options and what options are right, with number 2. Number 3, the importance of the church. Number 4, we looked about grandparents. And now number 5, the importance of helping children to have appropriate self-esteem. This one is the trickiest of all of them, because healthy self-esteem is hard to figure out how to get with our kids. because we want to brag on them, we want to praise them, we want to help them to realize their value and have self-worth. But if you do that too much, they become cocky, confident, arrogant, better than everybody else, goes in the wrong direction. And there's such a small sweet spot in what we do. I'll give you an example. We were talking to Haley the other day, and Charlie had done something she should not have done, and she got a spanking for it. And so Haley was doing everything she could to make sure that the 3-year-old understood that she had done something wrong and to not make that mistake again. And so Haley just kept saying, and we know now that makes God sad, and we know that that's not a good thing to do. And she said that enough. I told Tina, in fact, I purposely kind of changed the topic to get away from what Charlie had done, because I want Charlie to know that what she did was not okay, but I don't want her to feel beaten down and like I'm bad, I'm a bad person because of what I had done. Now, if you're a parent trying to help Charlie to understand what she had done was wrong, but when do you stop before it gets to that point that it's starting to affect self-esteem and self-worth? Are you with me? Does that make sense? And my point is, man, that's a tricky, fine, small, sweet spot. So let's continue to develop this as it goes. Children's self-esteem plays a significant role in how they turn out. In fact, to prove this point, all of us can think of situations in our growing up years, in our lifetime, that kind of affect how we did. Birth order. Do you think birth order matters? Oh, absolutely it matters. I'm the second. My one sibling, 3 years older than me, sister, never made a B in her life. I promise. 4.0 from kindergarten through a master's degree in math, of all things. Never had rules. Why? She didn't need them, and then I came along. And I've kind of talked about that birth order in the first versus the second a little bit, but what happens to the second one when they have an older sibling that seems to be perfect in everybody's eyes but yours? You know better. And I can tell you, wait a minute, back up. But if somebody asked me one day, they said, why did you get a doctorate? And I said, because I had to prove to everybody, and especially myself, that my sister was not the only smart one in the family. Now, there's probably more truth in that than you would believe, because when you grow up second to the perfect child, you are always trying to play catch up. And I don't know that I have a bad self-esteem. Maybe it's wrong in some directions, but I guarantee you, being in that situation played a part into much of who I am today. Kind of still does a little bit. Such as, if you have multiple children, you have some who need the pat on the back more than the other. Sometimes it's not the first. Sometimes it is the first. And all the things that go into why do they need the pat on the back? Well, let me just keep running without paying much attention to my outline for a second. So what happens with those kids who really need pats on the back? Well, depends on how many pats on the back they get. Depends on what kind of pats on the back they get. It depends on things like whether or not parents have disciplined in loving ways, letting them know obviously what they did was wrong. Accept the fact that people make mistakes. Let's learn from it. Let's correct it without beating them down. But if we as new parents think, all right, good parents are tough, we discipline firmly, that's what God-fearing parents want to do, and if we get so gung-ho about that, that we are so hard-nosed in discipline that we are breaking our kids down, what do? We raise them up while they are teaching themselves, I'm not good enough, and I have to do things to be approved. Are you with me? Does that make sense? Well, let me get back to my outline and let's kind of make sense of this. So many things do contribute to a child's need for approval and acceptance. Part of it is not on the nurture side. Part of it is on the nature side. And even though they have the same DNA, one of them is more confident than the other. One needs more attention than the other. Same environment, even the same genes. What's going on? Well, they are just different. Birth order, does it matter? It matters in a lot of different ways. Relationships with parents. Especially looking at the father-daughter relationships and the mother-son relationships. For example, it's usually easy for fathers and sons to have pretty good relationships because it's easy for them to find things in common that they like to do together. And this is not always the case. A lot of times it's the other way around. But oftentimes it becomes then more difficult for fathers and daughters to have an equally strong relationship. And especially if the daughter notices dad is always spending time with son. And they always go to ball games, they're always fishing, they're always doing this or that. Does that play into how they feel about themselves? How they think their relationships are with the parent? And who they may think dad likes the most? Yeah, those things play into this. It's starting to feel like, ooh, this is really difficult, isn't it? Well, it really kind of is. So many things contribute to how I feel about myself as a kid, talents and abilities. Now, let me make a really strong point here now. A major flaw in American kids and in school systems with American kids almost everywhere is that if you're not athletic, you're not as good as the other kids. I don't care how old we are in here, even at my age, I remember how much pressure there was in school to be popular. Yeah, that was the case for all of us. We all wanted to be accepted. We wanted to be popular. And we also knew that the athletic kids were the ones that were popular. Now, when you leave high school and go to college, that changes if you go, because the values are different. The ones who are intelligent, the ones who have leadership abilities, the ones who are leaders don't necessarily have to be athletes. However, the problem is by the time you get to be 18, how you feel about yourself is largely determined. And so here's the point I'm going to make here. It is so very important as parents to find what your children are good at and support them in that and help them to succeed as best as they can so that they will have self-esteem, feeling good about their abilities. Now, that's easier for some than others. It's easier to do that living some places more so than others. If your children are not good athletes, they may be good musically. They may be good in artistic ways. They may be good in theater. They may be good in whatever. Find ways to help them to succeed at where their talents are. Now, again, there's a small, sweet margin of error there because you can become crazy with the traveling, with the expense, with the not letting the world revolve around his talent and his ability piece of that puzzle. You with me? So if I'm sitting there hearing this, I'm going, all right, do we do this or do we not? You talk me into it and then you pull it away from me. and I get how difficult that is. But the more difficult thing is when you're not watching it at all, when you're not paying attention, when you're not trying, when you're letting it go with the flow. That's when kids get in trouble. And a part of developing self-esteem has to do with kids that are humble. Now, think with me about humility in children, and in fact, humility in people as a whole. Humility is a very desirable trait, isn't it? More times than not, our favorite athletes, if we follow sports, are not the cocky, arrogant, obnoxious athletes. They're the ones who work hard, who go out, do their job well, who say nothing, who don't make it about them. Who are our favorite employees or employers? Who are our favorite teachers or students? Who do we tend to navigate to? People who are humble, who have spirits of humility, right? And what causes them to be humble? What develops that humility? And in fact, the bigger question here is, can you even develop humility among children? You know, because they come out of the womb either with it or with not. Is there anything you can do about it? Well, let's try to answer that question. I believe that we can make a difference in how we treat them. And I think it is much like the nature-nurture question of which is stronger, our genes or our environment. And that research continues to show that it's just about 50-50. And as I said yesterday, I love that. And I think the same is true if we have kids who come out of the womb needing the pats on the back and needing to be accepted compared to those who will do something good for somebody and not tell anybody because they don't have to know. Well, it is those who are most lacking in confidence who seek most to promote themselves. In other words, often those who attempt to appear most confident are actually less confident. That's true, isn't it? You know, it's the ones who are constantly saying, well, I did this, or bringing it back to me, that sometimes appear to be very fine with who they are, but deep down what's going on there is they feel subpar, and they want to try to help you to see us better. All right, well, let's keep going with that thought. Humble children are okay with whom they are. They're good with whom they are. And because of that, they don't feel a need to promote themselves. And they don't feel a strong need to pretend to be something they are not. And they're not nearly as affected by peer pressure. And so what does all that look like? It looks like kids who are not the ones who are going to go out drinking on Friday and Saturday night because their friends are. They're the ones who are going, no, why would anybody want to do that? And they're the ones who would say, I don't have to do that. If you do, good, but if you think less of me because I do, that's kind of your problem, not mine. They're okay with whom they are. The easy kids to raise are the humble kids. So, how do we do it? How do we help them to do that? Helping children succeed and feel good about themselves is important. Helps them to feel good about themselves. Can it be taught? And how? Number one, continually teach children that we are special, made by God, and loved by God. Now, that may sound cliche-ish, but I believe it makes a difference. I believe when children grow up thinking that God is with them every step, wants what's best for them, made them, loves them, will take care of them, I think that provides a big piece of this I'm okay with whom I am puzzle that we're trying to put together. Number two, be careful how we discipline. Many years ago, we were in church Bible study on Wednesday night in Mobile, and there was a woman who had a child, a year and a half old, I would guess, and I will never, ever forget, she walked in a couple minutes after church started, walked down the middle aisle, sat on the second row right there, and as she walked down, she had her little toddler's hand in one hand, and in the other hand, she carried a switch. And I'm confident, and she was a bit socially immature, but I'm confident what she was doing was trying to tell everybody in the church, I'm a good mom, I discipline well. But, that's been 30-some years ago, and occasionally as I tell this story and think of this, I think, I wonder where that child is today. Ooh, I wonder how well that worked for her. Now, I'm a proponent of discipline. I, like my parents, believe in the spare the rod, spoil the child mentality. However, how do we do it? Do we do it in such a way that it breaks them down and tears them down? Or do we do it in such a way that they realize the mistake that they have made and there are consequences to mistakes, but we don't have to let our mistakes define us? And we can learn from them and build from them. Discipline with love and care. I lost a friend, 50-year-old, in fact, 49-year-old friend a few weeks ago who died from a rare infection and sepsis, and he was a lawyer. And we were talking one day, and he was talking about something his daughter had done, and she had messed up pretty bad. And he said, when he found out about it, he said, I went to her and I said, I'll have to decide later how to handle this. And then he told me, he said, I promised my kids when they were little I would never discipline them. Thinking about missing him's getting to me. I would never discipline them while I was angry. And I looked at him and I said, I've never heard a lawyer say anything like that. And we kind of laughed about that, but I was impressed by that. He understood this point right here. Number 3, it's important for us to provide sincere praise to our kids. Now, notice the word sincere, because it has to be real. I don't believe in every kid gets a trophy. And I don't believe in telling kids they are something that they are not. But I also believe that the way we help them to not try to prove themselves is to let them know that they are valuable, they have self-worth, they are important. And the only way they're going to know that is if we help them to know why they are. And for us to see ways to value and praise them and not tear them down is a very important part of this. And home should be our place of comfort. It should be our safe zone where we feel loved, appreciated, and valued, whether we are husband, wife, or son or daughter. Help children find what they are good at and support them and promote them in these activities, and start early. That old adage, they develop 90% of their personality by the time they're age 5 or 4 or 3, whatever it is. A lot of truth to that. And we have to start early. All right, so let's transition now to the whole matter of living in a day of social media. And the interesting thing about this is this plays so into what we just talked about. Why do kids like social media so much? As we'll see in some of the statistics I'll show you, they can't wait to get online and see if something they posted was liked. That paints the whole picture. I want to be popular. I want to see how many people have read what I posted. I want to see how many people have added me as a friend. This is just an extension of what we just talked about. So, findings from January of this year by Digital Information World. And I've got a lot of statistics. Tina says don't show all these. I'll try to just run through them to paint a picture. And I've got some in this presentation and some in the next one. Teenagers and young adults, 16 to 24, are the ones who spend the most time on social media. Look at the time, 3 hours and 1 minute per day. 3 hours and 1 minute per day. Adults between the ages of 25 and 35, 2 hours and 37 minutes a day. 35 to 44-year-olds, 2 hours and 4 minutes. There's a picture here, isn't it? And that is, yeah, there is something that has significant influence on our kids and on us, even if we're 45 to 54-year-olds, over an hour and a half a day in some form of social media. Now, I'll say this. I believe that number is less in Idaho than in Tennessee. Most of the people in Idaho are here for a reason, because you're running from stuff. And I say that kind of joking, but you know what I'm talking about. Part of it is get outside instead of inside. Part of it is nature instead of electronics. Yeah, I get it. However, I don't know what these numbers would be, but you all would be the first to tell me, yeah, we have our share of it here too, wouldn't you? Absolutely. How about 55 to 64-year-olds? An hour and 13 minutes. I would argue with this for me until I found the stouter built wooden boat page on Facebook. And it will suck you in. All right, let's keep going. Another study, November the 1st, reported 2021. Kids and teens spend a lot of time on social media. They reported, Common Sense Media, 5 to 7.5 hours a day influenced by media. Now, their definition of media is more, and we're talking about more than social media. We're talking about televisions. We're talking about listening to music, playing video games, newspapers. What's that? But different forms of media. But see, the point is still the same. Man, there's some mighty powerful time spent influencing our kids. And are we just willing to say, hope it works out well for you? And that's my whole point where I'm going with this. No, that's not the safe way to go. If you go back to 2016, 61% of teens said they wanted to see if their online posts are getting likes and comments. Now that number would probably be 90%, wouldn't it? 36% of teens said they wanted to see if their friends are doing things without them, being accepted. 21% of teens were checking to make sure nobody was saying anything mean or bad about them. See the self-esteem picture that's so prevalent here? And notice the need for approval and acceptance. All right, let's go ahead and look at, in fact, without taking that anymore, let's go ahead to the next presentation because it just continues with this. So what do we do about all the media influences that are affecting our kids? So questions or comments while we're getting that changed out?
We lost our mind if he wasn't on social media. And we tried very hard to balance that, but it got to a point where it was just, it was insane any other way. And I guess kind of back onto that is one of the things I learned is I'm not going to speak for Terry. I had tried very hard not to put my value, my self-esteem, my, how good of a dad was I to how they turned out. I did the best I could, and now they're going to make their own decisions, that kind of thing.
My nephews back in Arkansas were raised by me and my mom and dad, and now their mom, but there were a lot of disagreements about them wanting a smartphone where they had access to the world. And the arguments were, as being the generational gap, I was like, do you understand how quick and what they could get into? Well, yeah, but if we monitor that, but are you going to monitor that? They're 13 years old. And their self-esteem, well, they're having a hard time because all their friends have one and they're being made fun of. And I'm like, sounds like a lose-lose to me. However, you might get into that. But I just almost wonder, like, Haley and I limit screen time and try to do our best with that, but will there be a day that, they're the weird kids that don't have social media or don't, and then that self-esteem again, comes into play. Well, you're not trusting me, I'm not going to get on anything bad, and all my friends, they have, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, sure.
There's going to be a lot to dissect.
So I'll respond to that and jump ahead, and I won't belabor it when I get to it in this next presentation. But I almost always say that handing a kid a smartphone is the same thing, no, it's worse than taking a box of Hustler magazines into our 13-year-old son's bedroom and say, we're going to leave them here, but we don't want you to look at it. And when I say that, usually the mothers in the room, their eyebrows go, I've never thought of it that way. But that's exactly what's going on. And there's no way that we would do that without helping them with it. I mean, we wouldn't do that to begin with. But the problem is when we give them the smartphone and then we say, well, the box is already there. I hope he doesn't look at it. We sometimes don't even say don't look at it. But the truth of the matter is they don't have the maturity to handle it. You give a 13-year-old a Hustler magazine, and if he looks at the first page, he's going to want to look at the second page out of curiosity, and he doesn't have the maturity to not do it. And for us to think we can give him that or her that and say, well, I hope they handle it well, is so irresponsible, it's ridiculous. But what do we do when, as John Bentley, my IT director at Freed-Hardeman, told me the day I told him, well, we broke the rule of 16 and got Haley a cell phone when she's 15, he said, oh, well, you got her or you got an automatic tracking device, huh? Yeah, we did. Why? We wanted to know where she was. We wanted to be able to get in touch with her. It was kind of out of laziness on our part. But now the 15 thing is, Tina has second graders who have their own cell phones.
I'll come up here. I just, not a point, but a comment, a couple of comments. On this topic, I thought to myself, as I thought about social media and its impact, I was trying to think of all the stories that we've heard lately of teen suicides or children's suicides or these shootings and all these things that have been. Anytime you watch a news article on any of those things that occur, there's always, they've gone back and looked at the social media content of what that child or what that young person was involved with. And it always stems back to that self-esteem question. If you really think about everything that you'll read, I can't think personally of an episode where it didn't. And the second point comment I had was I was really shocked. We just spent all day yesterday and part of this morning talking about how time is so crucial and lacking in our parenting, but we have 3 hours a day to spend on social media. That statistic really stood out to me.
Yeah. And we're going to talk about that more in this one.
I'm sorry, I guess one of the things, and I guess this is specifically in our case, with giving a young kid a phone, totally agree. I'm on board with all of that. But whenever you have a kid, and well, I don't know, everybody, most people in here know our son Ryan. And Ryan is crazy social. He's always with people. And when it came that time, I'm like, look, we got to find balance because he's going to drive us into the ground wanting this thing. But we've also got to balance his content. Sure. So I guess, if you get to a point where how do you help young parents balance? The kid's going to go crazy if he doesn't get one. But at the same time.
Well, where I would start with that is by saying, make sure that the parents are driving, not the kids. Right? And I catch myself over and over and over again dealing with parents trying to help them who say things like, they just don't want to go. And I'll say, so at what point did you decide your judgment was worse than a 12-year-old's?
17, that type of, there is a huge difference of the transition time of maturity. They're not necessarily mature enough to handle a smartphone, I think, at 16, 17, 18, but developing them and handling those situations to go into young adulthood. But I think one of the major challenges, don't you think, is that the children who are raising these small children today, they were raised on cell phones. I mean, it was a whole different, we weren't, you know, and so we see the dangers and we see what could happen. But a lot of them can't because they're stuck in that society too.
Yeah. We came into West South Church one Sunday and sat down, and Amy Skidmore was sitting in front of us. She was teaching a class that Sunday, and she was doing some kind of exercise with the kids, such that she had a Polaroid camera. Do you remember those? On the bench in front of us. And so I picked it up, and I held it to my ear, and I said, Amy, how do you get this thing to work? That's my attempt to be funny, and it didn't work. But yeah, kids today, you know, I remember the first time I heard the idea of putting a camera with a phone, and I went, those don't go together. That's crazy. And even Haley's sitting there right now going, yeah, they do. Of course they do. They always have. Well, all right, well, let's keep going, and then we'll discuss as much as you all want to. Parenting in a media-savvy age. Same verses. A new one here, again talking about spiritual children, but I remember my grandmother saying one time after my grandfather had died, there's nothing that makes me happier than to think on Sunday mornings when I'm in church in Scottsville, Kentucky, that my children and their spouses, my grandchildren and their spouses are somewhere in worship. And, oh man, that's what we want, the joy to see that our children are where we need them to be. And so we try to train them up in the nurture and the admonition of the Lord. And when he is old, he will not depart from it. I always give my opinion of this verse, and that is, this is a general statement, not a guarantee, because the guarantee would not make sense in free moral agency system that God put in place. If this were a guarantee, then my salvation would be based on my parents, not on me. And if I don't make it, it's their fault, not mine. That doesn't make sense, does it? And so the principle is the odds of your children getting to heaven are far greater if we train them up in the nurture and the admonition of the Lord. And we want them to have their own faith.
I think something with that too is it says when they are old. And how often do we come back to things when we're older? So never give up. That doesn't mean that. I think we have to put that whole thing into context.
Oh, how true that is. I had 2 conversations this week with counseling clients where they were concerned with children where we had that exact same discussion. And, you know, sometimes I'll say, are their hearts still good? If their hearts are still good, then that's what concerns me the most at this point. They're trying to figure it out. Let them keep figuring. Let's rely on that heart being good. So in these numbers and in these concepts that we're going to look at, we're talking about more than social media in this one. The main means of mass communication, broadcasting, publishing, internet, all forms of media. And this study was done a while back, 2015, 2,600 youths between ages 8 and 12 and teenagers. So age up to 18, 19 years old. Their findings were 13 to 18-year-olds average about 9 hours of total media. That just blows us away. That's crazy. I don't care if you cut it in half. I don't care if you cut it in a third. If you don't want to believe the number, believe at least that the research was good enough to say that our children and ourselves are very much influenced by media. So, from gamers to social networkers, boys and girls have different types of media that they desire. 14% of girls crave social media. Back at this point, a few years ago, 5% on the part of boys. However, 27% of boys would rather play video games, while only 2% of the girls indicate that. So different forms of media, but still media. Girls like listening to music more than boys. Girls like to read more than boys. Does that surprise any of us? Probably not. teenage boys, an hour a day, video games, an hour a day. And I'm sure that number has not gone down. 41% of all screen time among tweens is on mobile devices. Guarantee you that number's more now than it was in 15. Another study from the Kaiser Family Foundation, a faith-based group, in 2010, which estimated an average of 5.5 hours of media for ages 8 to 10, 8 hours and 40 minutes. Again, Tina's right, too many numbers here, but the point, the picture is very obvious. So to what degree has this become an addiction? Has it become an addiction? Well, so what happens in the morning when we leave the house, we get halfway to work and we reach and our phone is not there? Oh no, it's like we forgot to put our pants on almost, isn't it? We'll turn around, we'll whatever, because we feel cut off, to the point that it has become very much a lifeline. So 2016, 59% of parents say their teenagers are addicted to their mobile devices. 50%, however, of teens say their parents, 50% of teens say, yeah, mom and dad is right, we're addicted to it. And 28% of teens say, well, and mom and dad are addicted to their devices. And 27 of those 28% of parents say, yeah, they're right. So what's the point here? The point is, ooh, man, we rely on this really heavy. Tina asked me before worship, do you want me to put my phone in your purse? And I said, yeah, sure, that'll be fine. And you know what I caught myself doing? Because we rely on it for so many things. So a CNN study, 2016, 200 8th graders, and Gia, a 13-year-old, said, I would rather not eat for a week than get my phone taken away. It's really bad. I feel like I'm going to die if I don't have my phone with me. Kyla said, when I get my phone taken away, I feel kind of naked. I feel empty without my phone. Yeah, that's the way we all are. 61% of teens say they wanted to see if their online posts are getting likes and comments. 36% say they want to see if their friends are doing things without them. 21%, numbers we've seen before. And what does the psychologist say? I think they are addicted to the peer connection and affirmation they are able to get via social media. Now here's my point so far, and that is this. Affirmation is important, but we need to do it from the right people and in the right way. And that does not have to be from media. And in fact, if it is from media, what kind of affirmation are they going to get, or what kind of behavior will be encouraged that would in turn be affirmed? Sociologists, all of this causes a lot of anxiety, which leads to their compulsive checking. And what about the bickering that comes with it? 94% of parents of teenagers said they didn't have a clue how much fighting takes place. However, parents that tried to keep a close eye on their child's social media accounts had a profound effect on their child's psychological well-being. Parent monitoring effectively erased the negative effects of online conflicts. There's a reason why I went back and highlighted this, because it is making the point that I'm trying to make in this session. In the world, but not of the world. It's not like we can completely remove ourselves from things that will influence us, but making a difference in helping and monitoring, just call it parenting, works. Parenting, when done right, works. We've just got to make sure that we are parenting and that we're not relying on the school to do it. We're not relying on the church to do it. We're not relying on big siblings to do it, that we are doing what we're supposed to do.
This is anecdotal, but just in my own practice, the effects of social media on these kids, I can't tell you the number of kids that come through the ER with suicidal ideations And it's when you talk to these kids, because we have to go in and basically get their history as to why they're there and then how we can work on the problem. I would say half of what we deal with is the fact that they're either being bullied or they're having negative feelings, or for whatever reason, it's what the content is that they're looking at. The other half is that the parents are now using the phone and social media as a discipline. And they will come in and they will be suicidal teenagers, and some of them have self-harmed by cutting or other methods. And I can't tell you the number of kids that say, it's because they took my cell phone away from me. And they cannot fathom living without it, that it drives them to that point.
So it's like taking a drug from an addict.
It's that powerful.
Yeah, it is. You know, I'm having to hold back because you and I see the same things, and I want everybody to see it. The statistical increase of kids who are suicidal today compared to 10 years ago is crazy higher. It's so ridiculously higher. I mean, I'm seeing it all the time. And the way media, cell phones, even parents who are so beyond knowing how to discipline, all they know to do is take the cell phones from them. You know, and sometimes they need to be taken from them. I'm not saying don't do that. But usually when that's happened, they waited too late to get tough with them. But, man, the frequency of this is just crazy. So, I'll also suggest that in a lot of ways, times are not that different, because it's always been lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, and pride of life. It's just now we have different mechanisms with which Satan makes these available. Now, technology and media temptations are different today in that so much younger children have access than used to. Now, I remember being a kid. I remember kids finding their fathers' or grandfathers' magazines under the bed, and, you know, most of us guys remember, you know, those kind of floating around from place to place, but it wasn't everywhere the way it is now. And it was infrequently enough that we didn't get so messed up in it as easily, at least, as kids today. And the bottom part of this slide is where I intended to jump into would we take that and all of the stuff from conversations that can be had from predators to ideology that is not age appropriate for kids and has the ability to take them and mold them when they don't have the wherewithal to handle it. And we just say, okay, be careful with it. That's crazy, and it's wrong, and it's irresponsible on the part of us as parents to give them the devices and not help them with it. And it is the case that there's more than just pornography. There's more than social media. You know, technology has changed everything. It changes the way we process information. I've got study after study where critical thinking is significantly different today because of technology. You know, and in fact, it affects the way kids read and write. You see it in the school system? Yeah, you did, didn't you? Incomplete sentences, LOL. Yeah, that's how we write. And it's crazy, even at Freed-Hardeman, when we had PhDs sending emails that looked like something a third grader would write because they so chopped it up because the way we read and write is different. Use or fail to use critical thinking skills. Now, as with most everything, there are advantages and disadvantages. Our kids today can do a lot of things we couldn't do because they know how to look it up on YouTube and follow directions. And a lot of our kids might son Carter has saved a lot of money by doing things he didn't know how to do, but he's good with YouTube and following directions. So as with most things, there are positives and negatives, but what do we do with all this? What do we do with all this? First of all, help children learn the importance of downtime. For those of us who are older, do we believe children are more impatient today than they were when we were children? Oh, incredibly so. Why? Because they have fast bandwidth. They don't have to wait on anything. If they have to wait 2 seconds, it drives them nuts. And so you take somebody who has instant gratification at that level and tell them, hey, why don't you just sit down and think for a few minutes? That lasts about 12 seconds, and that's painful. It has changed us. The way we think, we meditate, we reflect. When's the last time we have, even ourselves, sat down with an open Bible in our laps? Reading because we're hungry for information. See, that has changed too. Because with search engines such as Google, it is not how much we know, it is how much we have access to. Funny story, college kids were all at the house several years ago. We loved it. A bunch of Carter's friends, a bunch of Haley's friends, Danae Elder, you remember Danae? Jerry's daughter. She was in the group playing Clue, and somebody asked a question, hey, what do you do when, a rule question. The box top was turned upside down right beside her, and you know what she did? She Googled it. And I thought, what is this world coming to? Well, yeah, of course she did. That's what we all do now. I remember making a presentation at Magnolia Bible College one day trying to encourage them to put some money in technology. And I told them, I said, if you give me a computer with Google in one chair on the stage and Guyan Woods in a chair without a computer on his side of the stage, I have more information than he does. And I was right, but my ability to use it, to understand it, to make sense of it, see, there's a huge difference there. And because we access information instead of learn information, we do things very differently. Trying to get ourselves or our kids to stop and think, to meditate, to reflect, to consider, stopping to pray, and to realize we don't always have to be entertained. Man, that's going against the grain these days.
What I didn't say very well is that with all the stuff we're talking about, that I found, at least with one of our kids, that phone and what it came with, I unknowingly allowed that to then interfere and create challenges with my kid, as opposed to me trying to deal with him. I got so angry about what that phone was causing that it became about the phone and not about our relationship and my value of him.
It became more about the tool than what was happening behind the tool. Yeah. Well, let's go on. I don't want to draw this out too long, but we need to help our kids learn patience, and patience can be developed. It can be developed. We just have to help our children to do that and be purposeful. Number 2, we've lost the world of privacy. I ought not to have to tell everybody every time I go to the bathroom on social media. And when I see my children and other people tell everybody when they're out of town, when they're doing this or that, I go, why? Why don't you just leave your front door open and say, come in and take what you want? You've got the logical side of it, but you've got the, why do I want to be the center of attention all the time? Why do I expect people are interested in knowing where I am and what I'm doing? There's a little bit of vanity in that. Talking about that, explaining that, helping people to understand the importance of privacy. This one is big, and we're losing it, and how important that is. Helping children to understand that family is more important. and it's worth turning off technology. Tina's famous line is, leave your phone in a basket. Her solution for most things is to put something in a basket. And put a phone in a basket. Don't bring it to the table. Why? Our family is more important than our immediate devices. We need to help our children learn the importance of being responsible. They're going to mess up some. They're going to be irresponsible. We are too. But time management, while driving, getting enough rest and sleep. Had a mother this week in the counseling room who said, I can't believe it, but my child got out of school and he's staying up every night till 3 o'clock. And I said, when did the parent leave? And she went, ooh. And I went, oh, maybe I was a little strong there. But that's the way it is, right? We're letting 10-year-olds sometimes tell us what's best for them when it's not. So, some positives to electronics. It's not all bad. We do have opportunities in even social media to let our lights shine, as taught in Matthew 5:16. And it's a good teaching moment to tell our children, look, if you're going to use this, use it for good, not for evil. Use it to help people to see Christ and to see good things and appropriate values, not based on the world standards. It's also a great opportunity to use technology as an encourager. I gave a talk to our elders a few years ago, and we had a new elder who came in, and one of the things I said is, people in your church love any attention from you. You have no idea what a big deal it is when a member gets a simple text from an elder saying, hey, I hope you're doing well, I was just thinking about you. And he called me a few days later and he said, I had no idea that was as big as it is. I've used it several times, just taking advantage of a few down minutes just to text somebody in the congregation to let them know, hey, I just said a prayer for you, or I'm thinking about you. And he said, the way they come even look for me and find me after church to make sure and connect with me is completely different. Technology can be good too, and we need to find ways to do this. We've talked today, we've seen the concept of bullying and how social media can be used to tear people down. Help your children to understand the opportunity they have to make appropriate posts and comments, maybe to those who were bullied, to those who are not popular, to help to build their self-esteem up. What a great lesson it is to teach those kids. So, children's self-esteem is so important and vital in what and whom they become. CNN study shows the significance of this. Peer pressure, sacrifice values, all these things come into play. So what have we seen? What's the point? We do have a significant influence affecting our kids. And boom, parents must be involved parents. If you don't remember anything else today, if you've got kids at home, you go and help them to manage these influences and temptations and be the parent. All right, questions or comments? That's all I've got.
I've got a question. I guess it's a lot different than a lot of this. In your counseling, have you seen any significant difference, I guess, both in parenting as well as the kids from adoption situations versus, biological, in terms of how that flows?
Well, absolutely.
Okay.
From a lot of different reasons, from genetic tendencies to self-esteem feelings to that's just a long list. That's a bigger challenge often, not always, but often. And we all can understand that. Those of us who were adopted naturally and automatically have to deal with the question, am I loved as much? Am I valued as much as if I were a biological child? That, you know, if you're adopted, you're going to spend a lot of energy thinking about that and dealing with that. And then the different pieces of the puzzle that contribute to that can magnify it, that's a challenge. You know, my fishing buddy in Mobile was adopted soon after birth, and he has as healthy an attitude as that, and we've all heard it, and he and I've talked about it, and he says, you know, my mom and dad selected me. They didn't have to. I knew I was loved and wanted day one, and, you know, he was able to handle it in that very healthy way, but not all do.
Sometimes it isn't just the DNA, or it isn't the DNA if the mother has ingested drugs, alcohol during pregnancy, that can impact enormously.
Yeah. What else?
One of the challenges is to always find purposely say yes to things and no to some other things so that you can actively parent your kids. And if they don't get that self-esteem and attention from you, then they're going to seek it out elsewhere. They always seek it.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't come from home, they'll migrate somewhere.
Yeah. They're going to feel that cup some way, aren't they?
And because parents are so busy now, they usually end up with a guilt trip, so they'll give in. I see that more and more as a teacher. They'll give in to their children that maybe they wouldn't have done a few years prior, but they feel guilty because of the lack of time they've spent with the children. So they're really making it worse by giving in and giving into things.
And they replace their time with things and money and...
I think
Go ahead.
that I've learned, you know, with the help of Lynn over time is it's okay to look bad in front of a kid. Like, yes, I'm the bad parent and no, you don't get a phone. And you can tell all your friends your mom is the strictest. I'm okay with it. But it took me a while because I wanted to be like by my kid.
Yeah.
But I have to kind of be wise enough to know where.
You know, the studies very strongly and very consistently show that kids far greater appreciate, in a far greater way, appreciate parents who were disciplinarians and were strict with them than those who were not. However, remember the slide of Charlie and Everett when I said kids start early knowing how to motivate us in the heat of the moment, even though they know it's best for them. If they don't want it, they'll play every card they've got. You know, even knowing it's really not what's good for me, but it's what I want to do. So I'm going to make mom feel guilty for not letting me do it. Let's get up here and then we'll come to you, Terry.
Just real quick, I don't know if you guys have seen it or if you have Netflix. We don't have Netflix anymore. I'd invite everybody over to watch it. But on Netflix, The Social Dilemma is a video that everybody should watch. It's pretty eye-opening.
All right, Terry.
No, just say, what would be your encouragement to young families today who maybe have small children and have not been raised in a home of letting their children play outside, or having downtime? They're in this social environment that all of their friends are doing social media, and they have small children. And so they don't know this world that, again, we were raised in. Go play outside, we didn't have phones. We did, but, we didn't have cell phones. And to raise a small child, what would be the better way to help or even suggest to younger families that there is a different way to raise a smaller, to raise a child that doesn't have to be a second grader holding a phone? To use that as boredom tools or discipline or whatever.
Just say no.
But they don't know that that's not normal, is what I'm saying.
They don't have to know. That's
But you're talking about the adults.
I'm talking about the
the adults. Well, they don't know either, unfortunately. So So my admonition is sit down, stop, do a self-check on whether or not your decisions are reflecting your values, and make sure that time and money and all things are consistent. And best I remember, when I sit down and consider the reality of situations, I don't think I want to be like everybody else. I think that's a bad thing, not a good thing.
And to these people so they can feel accepted and that you love them and like them. And then you do the part like he's saying, like to me, because you don't want to come across as, well, I know more than you do. So they have to know that you're doing it out of love.
It's almost like you have to wait for them to ask. Right? You can't give advice if you don't ask.
That's what he's saying.
But if they don't ask, what do? You pray, I guess.
One of the things that's hard is to do for a lot of parents is you want to be a friend of your child, and well, that's good in a sense. But some people don't know how to say no. There's a boundary, there's an edge, and that's as far as you're going. But then on the other hand, is I was sometimes too authoritarian, and that's the other extreme. So you got to find that balance, because I've seen that most kids want a boundary, and they're going to always push that boundary just like water in a balloon. But you got to put boundaries around that balloon and say, this is where you're going, and there has to be consequences. But as a parent, I found out sometimes you don't want to deal with the consequences, because now you got to deal with it, where it's easier just to let them go. And in the long run, that's the wrong thing to do, because they will keep pushing that.
I don't know how many times today I talked about the small sweet spot. You know, that's kind of scary, isn't it? But you know what I really want to say? What I really want to say is I'm not nearly as concerned with whether or not you're perfectly in that sweet spot. I'm concerned with whether or not you're constantly trying and being purposeful. And that's the point today. We didn't get a lot right, even as wise and all-knowing as we are. If we were to do it again, we still wouldn't get a lot right. I'm trying to be funny again. But yeah, after you've gone through it, you do learn a lot. And I'm sure we would do a better job and things would be done better. But we'd still mess it up too. It is not whether or not we're going to be perfect. It is whether we are active, whether or not we don't get so busy that we don't have time to be parents. And we don't keep our values. When we don't keep our values representative with our time and our money, then things start getting out of whack. And when we start letting everybody else out there tell us what the norm ought to be, we're already in trouble. All right. Well, let's close with a prayer, and then Tina and I will be here. If you want to have individual conversations, Tina will be glad to talk to you the rest of the day. You going to say anything before we pray?
We want to pray. Can I say one more thing before you?
Yep, sure. I'm going to let you pray.
How do we have good relationship with our spouse, or even before we get married, with boyfriend, girlfriend? We spend time with them. You spend time with your significant other, not on social media. You spend time with them. And it's the same thing with our kids. How do you have a good relationship and raise good kids? You spend time with them. And we talked a lot about social media, but you talked a lot about a lot of other things. But it just, in my opinion, comes down to a lot of it's just time. Where are you spending your time?
Yeah. And relationships, and real relationships. And you can't have real relationships without having time spent. Well, thank you all for having us, and you all don't quit having the conversations because we are not here. Continue to have them and keep the questions and the situations in front of you, and you all will do well.
So So I just want to extend a thank you from our family.
Amen.
Thank you.
You know,
Amen.
most of these people already know that the rule in the all-written home is, I'll show you where everything is once. Now you're family, and you're going to be done yourself. I didn't tell you all that you spent 2 days here with us. Now you're family. So we will be calling you, I'm sure, because you're part of our family now.
We feel that.
Father God, we are thankful for this day, for this weekend, Father. We're thankful for the things that have been shared here. Father, we're thankful for Barry and for Tina and the mission work that they've taken on themselves to complete for you. And Father, we pray that you bless them, strengthen them, continue to give them strength and encouragement, that they may help others walk the walk and see the Christian way of life and help us shine that light. Father, thank you for the gift and the wisdom that you've given them, and again, we pray that you continue that. We pray that you bless our church family here. We pray that you strengthen us and give us encouragement each day. Thank you for your Son, Jesus, through whom we all claim as our Savior, and we look forward to that day when we live in heaven with you. It's in Christ's name we pray.